All right, welcome back, everybody. That was a very active chat and question and answer in the last session. So really appreciate that. I'm working on getting responses to all the questions, and I've also put out a new live poll asking about whether we should put expiry dates onto articulation agreements. So if you take a look along the left-hand side, you'll see an option for polls. Please take a look at the various polls we've got running today because your feedback is greatly appreciated. So now I'm going to pivot over to our next session, which is called Pandemic Pivot. And I'd like to welcome Tracy Roberts, who is the Director of Learning and Teaching at BCcampus. One of the things that I would like to ask is that if you have questions, if you could please put them into the session Q&A and chat during the presentation, because that way we can relay them to Tracy, who will be going live with at the end of the session and who wants to hear from you. So with that, I will turn it over to our broadcast and give it to Tracy to take it away.
Thank you, Mike. Hi, I'm Tracy Roberts, and I'm the Director of Learning and Teaching at BCcampus. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm recording this on the traditional unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, who are now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. My ancestors are from the United Kingdom, and I'm grateful to be able to work, live, and continue to learn from Indigenous people here on this beautiful land on which I'm an uninvited guest. I'd like to thank BCCat for having me as part of this event today. So here's my plan. I'm happy to be here to share a bit about the BCcampus journey over the last 7 or so months, what we've been doing to support teaching and learning online during a pandemic, what we've learned along the way, some resources that are available to you as a result of that work, and some reflections on the challenges and opportunities in front of us and what we think might be next. So I'll just take a quick moment to describe what BCcampus does in the online teaching and learning space. Our ultimate goal is to provide supports that will lead to better student learning experiences and outcomes. And we do this through things like projects, learning events, workshops, research, free open educational resources, and so on. And we focus on supporting the development of quality, accessible, inclusive course design and materials, as well as skills for facilitating learning. So in March of 2020, of course, there was an urgent need for everyone to pivot online immediately. Many of the BCcampus team members are actually experienced instructional designers, educational technologists, faculty, and facilitators. Some of us have worked together before at various colleges and institutions, universities in BC, and some of us had a longstanding joke about there being no such thing as an instructional design emergency. Clearly, we were wrong, and the joke has been retired, but our experience and skill sets meant we were able to jump in when it actually did happen. So here's what we did. Initially, our COVID response in March was to hold space for people by holding office hours multiple times a week and just invite everyone in the network to drop in for help and for support. There was so much fear and uncertainty about how to just get through the current semester, and we learned a lot from listening to what the most pressing needs were. So between March 20th and about May 22nd, we hosted 20 sessions that were basically how to teach online and had almost 1,100 people show up. They started out really broad and then got more narrow as we were hearing themes. So for example, we ended up doing sessions for trades educators and nursing educators on how to do online assessment in those spaces. Also, you might remember there were just so many resources flying around on social media. We started to collect them and share back what we considered to be just the best of the best. And then as we moved towards summer, we focused on preparing for fall, knowing that there was this whole other semester of courses that would need to be adapted for online. So we developed programming like a bootcamp for faculty that would address only the most pressing things we were hearing through the pivot time. And we increased our facilitating learning online offerings, our flow family of courses, as we call them, and we made them all free, which normally they're somewhere between $200 and $600 to take. We offered Bootcamp 3 times in July and August, and others actually adopted it because it's an open resource and offered it locally at their institutions in BC. So I'm going to come back to a couple other key things we did, the Open Online Course Project and some mental health supports, but I want to dig in a little more to Bootcamp because it brings a few threads together. So Bootcamp is a short online challenge-based course for faculty designed to address the top 4 course design concerns we were hearing about as the pivot unfolded. So the first problem was too many and too long live sessions. So one thing the pandemic revealed was that not everyone has great steady access to the internet, especially when everyone was needing to be online at the same time. And also people were starting to get Zoom fatigue. A second concern we heard about a lot was the use of online proctored exams. Challenges associated with this practice are ongoing and have actually ramped up in the last couple of weeks, as you may have heard in the news. I look at it this way. Not only is the practice of online proctoring problematic, but the practice of heavily weighted exams as an assessment strategy is not without challenges. And there are alternative practices that would address both of those things. So Bootcamp invites faculty to work through that issue for themselves with specific reference to their course and with support from facilitators and fellow bootcampers. A third thing we heard about a lot that we addressed in the bootcamp was doing assessment online. It's trickier for things that is really tends to be hands-on, like labs, trades, etc. So one of the challenges in bootcamp gets faculty to think about creative approaches to how to get there online. We collected so many examples of things like virtual labs to help educators think that through. And sometimes it simply can't be done. And so what are the options? Who can educators talk to try to make it work safely? And finally, the issue of online presence and engagement, especially for those who are new to online, which actually was a lot. There are things you can do to increase your instructor visibility and presence online without actually being online 24/7, and a bunch of things you can do to invite students to engage. So the final challenge in Bootcamp gets educators to work through and apply some of those things to their courses. So Bootcamp is a good example of opportunities that flowed from challenges, things that can be done to address by how we design and facilitate online courses. I also want to underscore that Bootcamp itself is an open educational resource, so you can have it if you want, and it's already been adopted, like I said, in BC. I've also heard recently in other provinces in Canada as well as internationally. So speaking more about course design, many of you will be familiar with the open textbook collection that BCcampus curates and maintains. When we're in the middle of the pivot, some colleagues in the system started wishing for a collection of open courses that they could adopt and adapt a high quality course online easily rather than having to start from scratch. So with project funding from the ministry, we started building an open online course collection to make that possible in the future. We did a mega infrastructure build over the summer. We've put out calls for courses, focusing on those that are most transferred first. We're developing a robust quality framework as we go, and we're working with a metadata librarian to help with findability. So the goal is to create really well-designed online courses, accessible, inclusive, decolonized, engaging, flexible, with openly licensed learning resources to show really great examples of the potential of online teaching and learning. So the collection right now is small, but it's growing, and eventually we expect to merge the current collection of open textbooks with the courses to provide a rich collection of for educators who are looking for open online course materials. So in addition to helping others to pivot, we are having to pivot our stuff too. So we have been quite proud of our reputation for offering awesome in-person conferences and events, such as the Festival of Learning, for the BC higher ed community to come together to learn and network. We're always seeking new ways to remove barriers to participating in those events, like providing free childcare, as well as supports to take care of all people at the event, like ensuring accessibility of spaces and materials, pronoun recognition, fitness breaks, quiet spaces, yoga, presenter lounges, excellent quality food, and so on. So this has been a real challenge for our event teams. How can we provide an awesome online event experience that still has the feeling of being really well taken care of? But we're taking it on and aiming to provide our first such experience this November, 17th to 19th. We're calling it Studio 20. It is 3 half days organized around the themes of visual, audio, and active learning. It's about engaging learners online, and it's also about reclaiming and remembering the fun and creative potential of teaching online. Some things we're hoping people leave with ideas for alternatives to kind of sit and deliver. We've got some great keynotes and a new to us event platform. So that should be fun and exciting. And another early response to the pandemic I just want to mention is a focus on mental health supports for students, faculty, and staff. The Ministry of Advanced Education, Skills and Training has provided funding to ensure there are lots of resources available, and BCcampus managed this project, including this website, full of resources and organizing lots of webinars and other online conversations. Since the end of April, we had about 30 webinars and over 1,000 people on various topics related to mental health. And we do expect that this sort of work is going to be ongoing. So in addition to reaching out through webinars, courses during the pandemic, we also did a survey of BC faculty at the end of June to find out a little more about their experience with the pivot and how they're expecting to move forward. The respondents were over 90% faculty, the rest with being librarians. We had respondents from 22 of the 25 post-secondary institutions, publicly funded post-secondary institutions. And I'm just going to talk through a few highlights. So first, I personally was surprised to learn that 68% had never taught online before the pivot. So that is a huge opportunity and need for learning and for support. During the pivot, 78% they made significant changes to their courses, and 78% they said they made their courses more flexible in order to meet the challenge of teaching and learning online in a pandemic. So that increase in flexibility is really good news for students. We also asked what people expected to have to do before their pivot courses actually ran again. 79% said the types of assignments they were using needed to change. And much of this was about needing alternatives to what they were doing in face-to-face settings that wasn't really translating online well so far. So another opportunity there. Educators who are new to this kind of course design really need training and exposure to ideas about how to do it well online. And of course, instructional designers and educational technologists are needed more than ever to assist and support them in doing that. 46% felt that there's going to be higher expectations for students to be live online, which has certainly been showing up. We heard that as kind of a challenge arising from the pandemic pivot. So this is another opportunity. We can help educators make the most of that precious live online time together, but not view being online synchronously as an equivalent to hosting a face-to-face class. 37% expect changes in the distribution of grades, much of that being related to using alternatives to heavily weighted final exams. So that's a trend that we hope to see continue as it really better supports student learning. But at the same time, 30% expect to add an online proctored exam. So this is something that we're going to keep an eye on, and we hope to support educators to at least consider alternatives that might better support learning. Only 6% of people felt that no changes would be required to their course. So that means the rest, 94%, will be doing some kind of course redesign work. So what does that mean for faculty? Workload, stress, increased demands on teaching and learning center staff? How are we getting ready for that? We hope to find out a little bit more. We're running another survey on the experiences of teaching and learning support staff, and it's running right now, and we expect to have some results by mid-November. On a positive note, this quote we received, I'll just read it quickly. Some of the transition to online has been very positive. It has encouraged us to think about how to be more flexible and inclusive in our delivery. We're really looking to reduce barriers to learning, something we didn't focus on as much before. It sometimes takes a big change like this to re-envision our curriculum and think about what it could be. So that quote sums up a lot of our hopes and a lot of what we're hearing in many interactions with educators over the last several months, and speaks really well to the challenges and opportunities. For most, it was and is a very difficult and stressful time, and yet there are opportunities to be better and provide more inclusive and accessible and flexible learning environments for students. And faculty and educators all over BC very much want that. They care so much about student learning, about student success, and they might need some help to make it happen. So, what is next? Perhaps the biggest opportunity is that there is so much need for change. So we have an opportunity here to do better and on a big scale in the BC post-secondary system. I'm old enough to have been doing this when online learning was first becoming a thing, like in the 90s. And at that time, I noticed when faced with going online, there were often noodlers and those who used a crowbar. Noodlers would tinker around the edges and make small, hopefully incremental changes to their practice, but this was mostly about doing the same practices just online. The crowbar people, on the other hand, would take the opportunity to crank open the whole course and, as that survey respondent said, re-envision it in light of the new affordances presented by technology, changing up assignments, getting creative with new ways to help students meet learning outcomes. Today, I imagine the crowbar people would be doing things like decolonizing their course readings, working with universal design for learning principles to add that flexibility, rethinking course late policies, and they would be making sure that all of their online course materials met a minimum accessibility standard. So that is a lot, and they need help, and they need resources to make it happen. So as we're planning for the year ahead, we will continue to create invitations and opportunities for the noodlers and the crowbar people and everyone in between. We definitely want to meet people where they are, and we know that that people's time and attention, especially online, is precious and scarce. Clearly, this pandemic isn't over yet, and so we're trying to think things differently about how to offer professional learning for educators and help them make these changes, keeping our things small and focused and hopefully fun too. That is all for me. Thank you very much.
All right, we're back. Thank you for the presentation, Tracy. We've got Tracy online, so for those of you that are participating in the chat and question and answer, please feel free to put your questions into the chat, and I can pass them on and moderate the questions. So we do have a first question in here from Sarah Greelands from Coast Mountain College, and her question is, what are some strategies that can be used to encourage faculty to embrace online learning tools?
Thanks for the question, Sarah. I think it always, to quote Simon Sinek, starts with why. So, it's obvious why it's become important now. It's really how we're doing things out of necessity. But there's also, the greater flexibility and access to learning provided by online. I've noticed in my colleagues, for everyone who is frustrated by the restrictions in our lives now, there's also another person saying, oh, I love this. Some students do flourish online. So I think that's one thing. But that after that, or maybe with that, I think faculty need good examples. How can it look? They need collegial support. I think there's nothing powerful than a fellow faculty member saying, hey, this is great. Here's why I like it. This is what I'm doing. And perhaps most important, they need other kinds of support. I really believe it takes a team. If I could do one thing, I would double the teaching staff on every course that exists, have everybody working as a team. That would be expensive, but I think it would provide so much more support for the learners and the educators involved. If that's not possible, I would love to see every faculty member have good access to learning design people, instructional designers, educational developers, as well as educational technologists and ready tech support. Those people help make it better, because all of that is also expertise, right? And so it makes sense to me that we have people who are experts in learning and learning technology working with people who are the subject matter experts to create a fulsome learning environment for students to survive and thrive and all that good stuff.
All right, that's an excellent answer. I wanted to ask you a question that kind of came up in one of our earlier sessions, but I think it's applicable here. And it's about dealing with the well-being of our faculty. So, we're all in a state where we've been, at home for 8 months. We've zooming in and out of all of our meetings. And I mean, I can say personally, I'm exhausted. And I think a lot of people are really feeling exhausted. And so we had a question earlier asking about how institutions are handling the well-being of their students when it comes to dealing with the stress of the pandemic and everything that's changing around them. But I would like to flip that question and ask your opinion on what kind of supports can be provided for faculty who are dealing with the stress, and how can we try to keep their well-being front and center?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, back to my earlier comment about team teaching, I think working as a team could help lighten the load if that's possible. I think for a lot of faculty and educators in the system, they're contract employees. And so their access to a lot of services that might be available to a regular employee of an institution may not be. And I think that's a huge stress. I think having more employment security for educators would help in some ways. I think, faculty were under pressure before this too, right? And I think we need to prioritize teaching and the work that they do for teaching. So rather than having these very full plates with not only a heavy teaching load, but also administrative responsibility and research, et cetera, I think really look at how making teaching a huge important part of their job and recognizing it and not asking them to do as much. It's hard. That's a tough question. And I guess it's just more support, more resources, and acknowledge that this is where the work is happening, is right here. So we have to make it a priority.
We have a question from the online community. It's from Karen McCready from Education Planner BC. And she's asking about how are faculty connecting with students to seek feedback on the different ways that faculty are moving the classes online.
That's a good question. And I don't know the answer to that, but that is a practice that I have and would advise faculty to build into their course design. It can be as simple as, a quick poll, and I would recommend doing it midway in the course so that adjustments can be made, as well as sort of the final, course evaluation, however formal. But yeah, that's a really good question. I think, we have heard, I listed 4 things that we were hearing that were problematic. It would also be nice to hear what's working for students as well. So an appreciative aspect to that question too. So yes, I'm not sure, but I hope people are asking because we're going to be doing this for some time.
Yeah, there certainly is no end in sight as far as I can tell. There's another question from the community. Do you have any plans to conduct surveys to evaluate students' online learning experiences and challenges? And maybe I'll just ask one step further. If you do run those surveys, what do you think where do you think you're going to go from there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like that is a tricky thing for BCcampus to do. Maybe. We are, as I said, asking staff. We have asked faculty. We do engage with students in other ways. I mean, I would like to have an ongoing sort of feedback about that, because we are trying to make plans for what we do based on what the needs are in the system. So we don't currently have plans, but it's a good idea. And I feel like I would like to think that through more, what that would look like. There was a second part to that question?
I guess the question is, where do you go from there? Get feedback from students.
Yeah. So where we go from there is we plan the offerings that we're going to make mostly to faculty and educators based on what we're hearing the needs might be.
Yeah, so there's a comment in the chat that says that BC TLC is considering, I guess, a provincial survey on faculty mental health. So it's good to see that there are some things at play there to take a look at that aspect. We're getting close to time. I thought I'd ask maybe just one final question. You know, now that we're sort of 8 months in, unbelievable. It feels like it's been a million years, but we're only 8 months into the pandemic. When you look back on what BCcampus was able to do and where you're moving forward, what do you feel worked best? And what are some areas that you feel could be improved?
I think what worked best is we really led with concern for the people. And so our early response was, what can we remove, right, from the environment? Earlier in the panel, there was talk about, you know, changing grading practices to pass fail, or, you know, how much flexibility do we have before it's no longer the course? And so we definitely wanted everyone to take away as much as they could to reduce the stress. So I think that was really good. And the listening part, you know, it was a real privilege for us to have so many people show up and share what was happening so that we could learn from what was happening in the moment. So I think that worked really well. Start with the people. I also think the sort of the targeting, the specific, like trying to address specific problems was also hopefully a good idea. What was the question? Would I do something different?
Yeah, or was there any area, were there any gaps that you feel could be improved upon in the months ahead?
It's a good question. I mean, there are gaps, and I think we just need to keep being attuned to what they are. I think we're going to continue to listen to faculty, to our various groups. You mentioned the BCTLC. That's a great provincial group of leaders in the teaching and learning spaces, and just try to position ourselves to, you know, be of service to the work as it is unfolding around us still, right? We're still in the middle of it, though it's tempting to want to say, oh, that was a pandemic, but it's ongoing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time. There's lots of comments, people thanking you in the chat for all the work that you and BCcampus have been doing. So it's great to see. There's a lot of acknowledgement. So
thank you.
Know that your work is not going unnoticed and it's being well accessed. Thank you for everybody that's participating. We're at time. So what we are going to do now is we're going to break. This is your chance to go for a walk with all the lovely dogs that I see people are posting their photos of in the community. Get something to eat. And when we get back in the afternoon, we are going to be offering 2 concurrent streams. So we have an articulation stream, and then we have a technology stream. So whichever area that you are most interested in, feel free to click into the sessions that you want to attend. And once again, know that even though if you want to choose one or the other, they will all be available after today, so that you won't be missing out on anything. Also, I just want to remind people that the virtual lounge is open. So if you want to go in and have a casual conversation with any of the attendees or BCCAP staff, click on community and look at the meetup section. That's where you can find the virtual lounge. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and we will see you at 1:30.